2014, Dr. Nadine Burke Harris presented on a stage similar to this the Adverse Childhood Experience Scale. That scale was a 10-year longitudinal study that folks at Kaiser Permanente did on the experiences an individual has as a children as it correlates to the outcomes of their health as they become an adult. It resonated with me because, I grew up in an area where I knew there was a lot of people having childhood experiences that were negative. Becoming a therapist, I didn't give much thought to it except for the folks that I would counsel and the things that they would tell me. I would use the scale quite often. Well, something fascinating happened about 14 years ago when she did that presentation. I started thinking about a young man named Johnny. Now, Johnny and I lost touch when we were about 10, and he somehow went away. I didn't know where he went. We just kind of faded. Johnny, when we reconnected in the COVID, because we did reconnect when COVID hit, he was telling me about some of the things that happened as he was away. That time we missed. I said, Johnny, tell me a little bit about your life. Like, what happened? Where'd you go? What went on? He's like, I'm going to start right there. When I left at 10? Well, things were okay, but they weren't. I was split between my mom's house and my grandmother's house. My grandmother raised me, and this is Johnny talking. My grandmother raised me, and, she imparted in me some things that I didn't really understand. She said that you don't go outside to get dark like some of your friends. You don't do certain things with certain people because they don't live like you. And, if you do those things, you won't get a good job and you won't be employable and people will hate you. And then if your skin gets really dark, you won't attract the woman that you want. And I was like, whoa, what does that have to do with anything? And then he started telling me some of the experiences that he had. Well, he's like, in that same household, my grandmother, I used to drink her wine that she'd hide behind the back door of her room. And I would get in trouble. And in some of those troubles, I would get spanking or I would get restricted to my house and I couldn't go outside and play. And so all I had was myself, and I didn't know what to do in some of those times. So I get into trouble on TV or do things I wasn't supposed to. I go to a neighbor's house and steal some movies and watch those movies. And those movies taught me some very bad things. It taught me how to not have great relationships with other people or not have great relationships with people that I cared about. And I said, but Johnny, you left. What happened? He's like, in between those times, man, there was a lot of violence that I was witnessing. I witnessed violence on both my mom's side and my dad's side of the family. And being split between the two, my dad's mom, which was my grandmother, her family abused me in such a way that I didn't understand why they would treat me this way. I didn't know why I didn't feel accepted. I didn't know why I had to endure the pain of someone else. Being called a little black boy or a little dark-skinned N-word really resonated with me. Being told that you weren't going to amount to anything just like your dad were words that were resonated all the time. If something happened to my mom because you live there, I'm going to kill you, he was told often by his aunt. Imagine having that type of programming placed upon you. And then you go to your mom's side of the family, and that's supposed to be great, which he was telling me he'd spend time over there, and over there he witnessed more violence. He told me a story of how at one night his mom was having a party and his family was there, and all of a sudden the ambulance started to show up. Well, his mom started running out of the basement, and she had her head split wide open, and he didn't know what happened. And he's like, man, what's going on here? his uncle runs up the stair with the flashlight, chasing her, and said, "I'll hit you over your head again." And then the cops show up and take his mom away. And later on that night, he said he remembers his mom coming back and just grabbing him and holding him in her arms and saying, "Hey, I love you. Everything's going to be all right." And then he told me about his brother who was at his mom's house and how his brother would hold him down, and you play the spit game with you, where he'd hold you down and he'd say, "Open your mouth," and he'd drool and try to suck up the spit, and he would never suck up the spit, but if you close your mouth, he'd punch you in the face. And I was like, man, what a life, man. He's like, yeah, that wasn't fun at all. And then he told me another story about one day where he was cooking something in the kitchen and his sister came downstairs and his brother was coming from those same basement stairs where he would hold him down at. And he hit his sister in the face for nothing. And his little brother, him, trying to protect his sister, his brother grabbed him and threw him down the basement stairs. And proceeded to run down those stairs and drag him back up those stairs and start beating him up again. And I'm like, "Oh, Johnny, man, did all this stuff happen?" He's like, "Yeah, man, I'm trying to tell you it happened." And he said, seeing all that kind of violence and things like that, it definitely did something to me. So I just wanted to hide. And then, as he got older, he would go to middle school and things wouldn't, middle school is a rough time for everybody. And he just said he just didn't enjoy it because he had to fight every single day in middle school because the city where he lived in, it was predominantly African American, but there was dark African Americans. And remember, his grandmother said, "Don't go outside because you get too dark." So he didn't fit in, and so he had to fight almost every day because of his own skin color. Because he was lighter than everyone else and he felt rejected, but he was a nerd, so he was trying to figure out where he fit in, and he couldn't fit in with that group because he was darker than all the rest, and he didn't fit in with the other group because he was smart like them or whatever it was, and he just didn't feel like he had a place. And so in middle school he just fought. And then those threats from his aunt kept coming because remember, people talk, and his aunt would say, "Hey, if something happened to my grandmother or my mom, I'm gonna kill you." So he didn't know what to do. So those years finally passed, and he did go to high school, and he said, hey, in high school, he finally found this woman that he thought he liked, and they made a relationship, and they made it all the way to 12th grade. And well, in 12th grade, this woman got pregnant, and he found out that the baby wasn't his because she had another boyfriend. And so then he was like, hey, what is life doing to me? So he started to resent the very thing that he wanted, and that was a relationship with women. And he started to hate black women. Fast forward that story a little further, he joined the Air Force and he went away, and he didn't fit really into the Air Force because, back then it wasn't as equal opportunity as it is now, and he just faced a lot of racism. He faced a lot of, you got to be better than everybody else, but he just didn't want to be better because he didn't know how to be better, and all he knew was just to be himself. And that caused a lot of fights because people would tell him what to do, and he realized that he rejected authority. And so as he was telling me these stories, I'm just like, man, this story sounds really familiar. But I didn't put it together then. So as he's telling me these stories, as he's in the military and he's trying to develop these relationships, he realized he couldn't because he never learned how to make a relationship with anybody outside of his grandmother, because that's the only person he could really trust. But she had already programmed him to think a certain way. To go back a little bit further on that story, I just remember he told me that the baby wasn't his from that first lady he was with, that first girlfriend, because she had another boyfriend. And so that kind of cemented his hatred towards black women. So he joined the military and he went away and got all of these, started doing all these things. He started traveling. He saw action in the Gulf War. He saw some combat. He actually saw someone get killed by a tank in Somalia. Got run over by a tank. And so as he's telling me his story, I'm just like, oh my gosh, what are you going through? He's going through a lot. And so he started drinking really heavily. Got his first DUI, went to a treatment program for 30 days and kind of laughed that DUI off and got through everything. He started flying and doing his career again. And next thing you know, he's back to original state of living his life, angry, afraid, not knowing where he fit in. Then he met this woman in a nightclub, and he decided, hey, I'm going to give this thing a try. So 3 months after he married, he got deployed, and he was sent over to Afghanistan or somewhere over there where he was telling me the story. And this woman changed his life because she didn't give his coat away that she wore. And this coat was his first leather coat that he ever bought. And he prized that leather coat, and he met her that night, and he gave it to her to wear, but he was so drunk he didn't even know that she had it on. And somehow that coat made it back to his friend, so he's like, hey, I love her. She gave his coat back to his friend, and they started building this relationship. But remember, he got shipped away 3 months after they met, and so he asked her to marry her, and she said yes, and he came back, and they started making plans to get married. 6 months to the day after they met, they got married. They had a kid on the way because he started living a wild life before that, and when they got married, a month after, he had a kid. And then a month after that, they had to move from Southern California to Northern California. He moved his grandmother in with him, and he became a father, a husband, and a military man all at the same time, and he didn't know how to handle that. Guess what he did? He started drinking again. And when he started drinking again, all those things started flooding back to him, the traumas, the things that he witnessed, the abuse that he had witnessed. He started telling some of his other stories about, like, hey, here's what I used to do to women. I didn't care about them. I don't know how to care about them. So he would abuse women, and this led to abusing his wife. Not physically, but emotionally. He would cheat on her, having affairs and doing different things, and he would never say those things, but this is what he would do. And so I asked him, I was like, where did you learn all this? He said, I didn't learn it anywhere. I watched TV shows as a kid, and, when I grew up, these were TV shows like Dallas and Falcon Crest, and, this is what you did. You had a wife, and you had mistresses on the side, so that's what I thought marriage was, and so I had kids, and I got a wife, and where's my mistress? So I went and got one, or a couple, or two or three. Well, that drinking and all those things caught up with him again, and he got a second DUI. And this time it was a bad one. It was pretty painful because he had a full bore kernel on the airplane that he was taking out. He was the mechanic on the airplane. And that airplane can't fly without that mechanic signing it off. Well, he went to a treatment center, 30 days inpatient, got clean, and he started learning about his life and started figuring out that, hey, I can't keep living this way. I got to do something different. So he got out the military and got his life clean, and shortly after he got out the military, he adopted his daughter. And he had to face for the first time in his life how to love the thing he became despised of, and that was a black woman. His daughter changed his life. And I thought to myself, I'm like, man, that story sounds very familiar. I know it, but man, that's an amazing story. So as he changed his life, things happened. His daughter grew up, and his marriage started changing. And then in 2001, he met this group of guys in this job he went to go work for. And these guys started talking to him about denying yourself. And he's like, I'm not denying myself anything. If anything, I'm going to get everything I can out of this life. And in denying himself, he learned to have a relationship with God. And God said, hey, you give your life up for me, I'll give your life better than you ever known. And he's like, nobody ever said things like that. That's not true. Whatever. Look, I know this God thing, and it don't work. So he pursued it anyway, and he got right. And in that pursuit, he started telling his wife about the stories and all the things, and he got reconciled with his wife about all his infidelity and all the things that he was running away from, all the things that alcohol and all the drugs and all the things in the world wouldn't cure. He got right. He got okay with God, and he got okay with himself, and he got okay with his wife. And so he started living a life very free, and he started doing some different things with his life. And shortly after that, he adopted his third child. And that child taught him something very different than the first two, because that child came with some challenges. But he started learning how to really love. his children, his wife, and himself. Now, as he grew up, he got better. He started getting some mentorship in his relationships with his wife and with his family, and he continues to go through that relationship mentoring today. And, he started doing some things in his life. Through that mentoring, he went to school and started getting his degrees and opened up a business and started doing some things in the community where he became a very active part in his community. And he said, hey, I'm going to do something with my life because I want to help people who've been through the same thing that you've been through. Now, he suffers from a lot of health challenges. He's got high blood pressure, diabetes. He can't feel the ground he even walks on because he has a thing called neuropathy. But what he does have is compassion for life. And he wants to help everybody that he comes across know that there's something different. And you don't have to worry about who you were or the things that you've been through, because you can change it if you just cross the Rubicon. If you didn't catch it, that's me. Thanks for letting me share.